Hello everyone. Today we are talking about how DFM and DFA can save your RF prototypes. I'm Madana CC, the Engineering Project Coordinator here at Sierra Circuits. Thank you for joining. For those of you who are new here, I'll tell you a little about us. Sierra Circuits is a one-stop solution for PCB fabrication, assembly, and component management services. You can always request a quote from Sierra. We're in the Bay Area here in Silicon Valley, and we have about 100,000 square feet of PCB manufacturing and assembly campus. We offer advanced technologies like HDI, rigid flex PCBs, RF and microwave PCBs, and we also work in partnership with our customers on complex designs, not only on PCBs but assembly as well. Please feel free to reach out. So, today we're talking about DFA and DFM in PCB designs, and we're definitely talking about some common DFA and DFM issues or mistakes that can affect your prototype, and of course, some guidelines and solutions to prevent them. Design for manufacturing, that is DFM, is a process of optimizing a PCB layout to ensure it can be fabricated efficiently as per the manufacturer's capabilities. It focuses on material selection, stack up layers, trace widths and spacing, drill sizes and tolerances. Whereas design for assembly, DFA, is the process of designing a board to ensure the components are mounted and soldered efficiently during the assembly phase. DFA usually focuses on component footprints, polarity marking, pin 1 marking, part to part clearances, and component to board edge clearance. By following some DFM rules, you can ensure manufacturability and reduce overall board costs. It also helps you optimize design to prevent common manufacturing defect. DFM guidelines are crafted to align your design with your fabricator's capabilities. This alignment not only minimizes fabrication issues but also reduces design revisions. And finally, DFM helps you increase the yield, which is critical for high volume manufacturing. Let's discuss a few DFM guidelines for radio frequency boards now. Mismatched CT between copper and laminates often result in via pad dislocation from the contact pads. To minimize this risk, you can choose materials with a CT that is close to copper, around say 17 ppm per degree Celsius in the X and Y direction and under 70 ppm per degree Celsius in Z direction. Next is the thermal conductivity. So laminates with poor thermal conductivity can lead to overheating. So you need to opt for materials with a thermal conductivity above 0.5 watts per meter Kelvin at least. Also choose substrates with a glass transition temperature that is above 170 degrees Celsius because lower glass TG materials usually expand more under heat, increasing the risk of cracked vias, lifted pads, or delaminated copper traces. Also, variations in dielectric thickness might impact your impedance. So, always ensure uniform material thickness, ideally within, say, plus or minus 10% of the specified value. Building reliable stack-ups is a very critical step. You must tailor your stack-up based on at least these three parameters, that is the signal speed and operating frequency, the number of layers that is needed, and the current capacity and thermal requirements. Before finalizing the finished board thickness, make sure to check your CM's tolerances, typically plus or minus 10% of the target thickness. Also ensure symmetry in your circuit board stack-up because this prevents bow and twists. Usually PCBs show some degree of warping, and that is why we have a table here that outlines the criteria for maximum allowable bow and twist as per IPC 6012. Now we have a quick demo on a StackUp Designer tool. So our StackUp Designer tool offers a categorized library of pre-designed stackups. As you can see, we have the low-cost stackup, the standard high power, high frequency, and the HDI stackup here. And we also have an option tailored for complex BGA designs. This tool integrates the impedance calculator along with the signal loss, S parameter, and crosstalk calculators. Additionally, it also includes specialized calculators such as the via current capacity and temperaturized calculator, the trace with current capacity and temperaturized calculator, and of course the PCB conductor spacing and voltage calculator. Let us choose standard stack up for now. Here you can enter the project name, the PCB size, the PCB type, choose a layer count here, then choose a material from this drop down. Let's go with FR408HR and a PCB thickness. Now you need to select the inner rounds and the outer rounds. We also have some other parameters here with default settings. You can of course change them if you wish to do so. And now click on generate stackup. Here you can see that the stackup has been generated. Here you can change the stackup layer between signal plane and mixed layer. Let's go with mixed layer here. Similarly, to make it a symmetric stackup, I'll change this layer as well. You can see that the diagram also has been changed accordingly and the copper percentage will also be automatically adjusted. Now click on view detail stackup and we can see that a detailed construction of the chosen stackup will be displayed here. We have multiple tabs here. The first one is the control impedance tab. Click on add impedance model and you can add the model type here. Enter the impedance layer number, a first reference layer, a second reference layer, the target impedance and a trace separation and click on add. You can add as many number of impedances to this table as you wish to do so. So now it's added to the table. You can click on edit here and the whole impedance calculator will be displayed here. You can change these input parameters and recalculate values for the width or the impedance here. We also have the signal loss, S parameter and the crosstalk calculators available inside. Now we have the via information tab here. You can click on add via. Choose a via here from the drop down, enter the drill diameter or the via pad diameter and click on add. Once it's added to the table, you can scroll down and you can see that the via current capacity and temperature rise is already calculated for this via and displayed here. You can click on edit again and this via current capacity and temperature rise calculator is displayed to you and you can change any one of these input parameters and recalculate your values. Similarly, we have the trace information. Here too we have the trace width and the PCB conductor spacing calculators here. You can choose on any one of these calculators, select a parameter to calculate, select the layer, can enter the input parameter and click on calculate and add. This will add it to the table here. You can click on save stackup button here. What it does, it saves this stackup that you've been working on into your system and you can always come back and click on this view saved stackup list and go back to the saved stackup and continue editing it. We also have a number of export options. You can click on this export button and you can see that we have the Allegro and Altium start file here. We also have the Allegro and Altium stackup file along with the stackup file in the IPC standard 2581. All you need to do is click on any of these buttons and download the data and then you can directly transfer it to the ECAD environment. We also have the Altium rule file and the instruction manual which basically instructs you on how you can download or transfer this data into the ECAD environment. Let's get back to the presentation now. We're discussing VR design now because when it comes to mechanical features like drilled holes and slots, precision always matters. The standard tolerance for drilled holes is plus or minus 3 mil, while for routed slots, it's typically plus or minus 5 mil. You can have at least 6 mil drill to drill spacing to maintain structural integrity. Also incorporate a minimum of 8 mil drill to copper clearance to avoid short circuits. Ensure adequate capture pads for laser drill vias. The capture pad diameter is equal to the drill size with an additional 4 mil. Also keep a 10:1 aspect ratio for through holes and 0.75 is to 1 for microvias. So when you're designing plated holes, it's important to watch out for tangency and breakout issues. Tangency occurs when the hole touches the pad edge, while breakout happens when the hole extends beyond the annular ring. To avoid these problems, ensure your annular ring requirement is within the manufacturer's capability. You can verify whether the plated holes have copper pad on all the layers. Adhere to these annular ring sizes to avoid any kind of tangencies and breakouts. To avoid electrical shorts, crosstalks, solder bridges, and reliability issues, you need to implement these few VIA design clearances that we have mentioned here. The first one is that the minimum clearance between VIA and routed or scored edges is 10 mil. Incorporate at least 8 mil drill to copper clearance, and the antipad should be 16 mil bigger than the hole size, and the plane relief should be 8 mil. We also recommend that the clearance from the solder mask should be 2.5 mil larger than the pad diameter. When you're working with controlled impedance designs, stick to these guidelines. The first is to ensure all the controlled impedance traces are included in your fabrication drawings and design files. Avoid splits in the reference plane, and for differential pairs, maintain a consistent gap, ideally, let's say 3 times the trace width, to preserve any kind of impedance balance. You need to maintain uniform trace widths and clearances to avoid mismatches. We have another quick demo on our impedance calculator tool now. Sierra Circuit's impedance calculator tool uses 2D numerical solutions of Maxwell's equations for PCB transmission lines and renders fairly accurate results which are suitable for circuit board manufacturing and engineering analysis. This impedance calculator tool supports 82 impedance models with multiple geometries. As you can see, we have the uncoated microstrip, the coated and the embedded microstrip, and the strip line. And for each of these specific models, you can choose the single-ended differential pair, the coplanar single-ended, etc. here. So let's choose the coated microstrip differential pair for now and enter the input parameters. Let's enter 3.348 mils for the dielectric height H1, a dielectric constant of 3.63, a coating height of 1.5, the coating height H2C, and the dielectric constant ER2 already have a default value, but you can change them if you wish to do so. We'll enter coating height H3C and enter delta W. Delta W is nothing but the difference between the top of the trace and the bottom of the trace. You can click on this help content button here that displays a table that suggests delta W values based on the starting copper weight. You can use it as a reference. Let's go with 0.5 for now and enter a trace thickness, a trace separation. To calculate trace width, we need to enter target differential impedance and click on calculate W. You can also do reverse calculation wherein you enter the trace width and click on calculate ZD to calculate the differential impedance instead. So now we can go to the signal loss calculator here. Enter the dissipation factor, the frequency, the surface roughness. Let's go with 6 because this is standard roughness for a foil. And a length of about 2 inch. Click on calculate loss and the signal loss output in the odd and even mode are calculated and displayed. Next, we can go to the S parameter calculator for the same chosen model. All you need to do is enter the source impedance, the load impedance, choose output type using the drop down and click on calculate S parameter. Since this is a coated microstrip differential pair, we have a 4-port S parameter and a mixed mode S parameter matrices here displayed along with the characteristic impedance and the propagation constant. One thing you need to make sure before using the S parameter calculator is that you need to make sure to use a signal loss calculator before, because the frequency that we have entered in the signal loss calculator will be used in the calculations in this calculator as well. Next, we have the crosstalk calculator. We enter the couple trace length, the signal rise time, the signal voltage, and click on calculate crosstalk. And the near end and the far end crosstalk results are calculated and displayed. Let's get back to the presentation now. Let's discuss placing antennas on RF boards. So ensure adequate distance between the antenna and ground planes, metal components, or high-speed traces to reduce interference. You need to also avoid placing antennas near large power planes. Follow the manufacturer's specified keep out area. For example, no copper, wires, or components beneath or around the antenna, and do not place antenna near mechanical stress points like screws, connectors, or flex areas to prevent detuning. Ensure no components, test points, or silkscreen markings overlap with the antenna's near field region. So you need to always use a continuous ground plane with no breaks. Discontinuities can introduce impedance mismatches and hence degrade signal performance. If you're implementing via stitching for shielding, keep the spacing between edges and vias in the range of about lambda by 20 to lambda by 10. For RF traces, maintain a spacing of 1.5 to 2 times the trace width from nearby ground ports. Also, watch out for copper islands and unconnected copper on inner layers. These floating pieces can radiate EMI, and always connect them into the ground plane. And finally, when you're placing conductive shields around sensitive circuits, make sure that they're connected to the ground. Choosing the right surface finish for your RF PCBs is also a critical step. And when you're selecting a surface finish, you need to consider a few parameters like the operating environment, the shock and drop issues, corrosion, presence of fine pitch components, and also the flatness of the SMT pads. Choose ENIG or ENIPIC if your design has fine pitch components because these surface finishes usually ensure reliable soldering. Also specify the finish type with the desired thickness range in your fabrication notes. We have mentioned a few typical thicknesses for common finishes here. Like ENIC has a thickness of about 3 to 6 micrometer in nickel and 0.05 to 0.2 micrometer gold. HASL will have typically 2 to 40 micrometer tin lead or also a lead free thickness. Immersion silver about 0.1 to zero point 0.4 micrometers. So include these surface finish thicknesses in your final stack up thickness calculations uh, to avoid any kind of issues. So design for assembly helps you streamline the entire assembly process. By simplifying part placement and soldering, DFA significantly speeds up production. It also ensures that the layout is optimized for automated pick and place processes and reflow soldering. DFA helps prevent thermal imbalances which can otherwise lead to solder joint failures. It also promotes part orientation and reduces the risk of misalignment during assembly. And most importantly, it makes sure test points remain accessible and are not blocked by surrounding components. Let's just quickly discuss 9 common DFA mistakes and solutions to prevent them. The first one is to ensure that the footprint aligns with the most recent version of the component datasheet. You need to check if the pad sizes and shapes align with the component's lead. Also indicate the polarity and pin 1 markings and validate the coordinate units in the centroid file and match the units used in the assembly process, whether that's millimeter or inches. In your assembly drawing, you need to include these few specifications: part reference designators for sure, the polarity markings for all ICs, and unique handling instructions for ESD devices, heat sinks, and or connectors. When you're creating your BOM, make sure that you validate your part numbers, descriptions, and manufacturer details carefully so that there is no confusion. Verify components listed in the BOM are readily available to avoid any production delays. Also, accurately estimate the quantities that are needed according to your assembly requirements. It's also important to regularly review your BOM to spot any obsolete or unavailable parts and replace them with suitable alternatives. To simplify the process, you can use Sierra Circuit's BOM checker tool. This tool instantly flags any issues in your BOM and even provides a cost estimate based on your desired PCB quantity. When you're designing your PCB layout, maintain adequate courtyard clearance around the components. We recommend at least 10 mil of courtyard clearance for all the components, and components smaller than 0603 packages should have 6 mil spacing. Connectors, crystals, and capacitors need a minimum of 20 mil clearance. Sensitive devices like BGAs should have clearance of about 39 mil. When you're placing your components on your layout, follow these two spacing guidelines. The first one is to incorporate at least 8 mil part to hole distance. Also, the spacing between the component to the annular ring edge should be a minimum of about 7 mil. Let's talk about components to board edge clearances. Position the components 50 to 70 mil away from the board edge. And for taller components, maintain a clearance of about 125 mil from the board edge. We recommend you to incorporate a 20 to 25 mil spacing between the board edge and SMD components. Finally, clearance between copper traces and manually installed parts should be 10 mil for outer layers and 15 mil for inner layers at least. To dissipate heat from components, you need to add heat sinks, thermal vias, and fans. So identify hotspots and optimize component placements. Also ensure adequate space for airflow around components so that you can ensure efficient cooling. Use a minimum of 4 spokes around thermal relief pad for balanced heat dissipation. The spoke width should be about 1 by 3rd to half of the pad diameter. Maintain a uniform spacing between the spokes for a consistent thermal relief distribution. To avoid pad overlapping, maintain a minimum solder mask web of 4 mil for green and red colors and 5 mil for all other colors. Implement a minimum of 4 mil solder dam. And also verify if the ratio between solder mask openings and the respective pads is 1:1. Poor silkscreen legibility is also a serious concern. So let's quickly go over some key silkscreen guidelines. The first one is to avoid overlapping reference designators. Also make sure that the designators are placed outside the component body. Then stick to a minimum line width of 4 mil and text height of at least 25 mil for clear readability. And always use white as the standard silkscreen color. Finally, don't forget to validate the logo placement and date format against your company's requirement. We have used these resources for a webinar. You can always go and check them out. You can also get in touch with our CRO Amit. Please feel free to reach out. We have various design tools and resources that you can check out at our website. We also have the PCB forum Sierra Connect. All you need to do is post your question here and our expert will get back to you as soon as they can. We also offer end-to-end PCB manufacturing services. Here's what we bring to the table. And you can also explore our design services if you need assistance with your PCB design.